Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon for a webinar to discuss branding your ownCloud instance and integrating your corporate identity. My name is Bob Boulay. I'm one of the senior sales engineers here with ownCloud, and I'm going to be taking you through the next half hour or so. A couple of ground rules before we get started, a few housekeeping items. We are going to be recording this session so that if you or a colleague miss any part of this, it will be available for replay, so you can send it to anyone who may not have been able to attend today. You'll also get an email once that replay is available. The other piece is questions. If you have questions, concerns, you want some additional information, feel free to use the Q&A window of the the webinar WebEx client on your desktop. We will get to as many questions as we can, and admittedly, some questions are simply too complex to tackle in this forum. So if you don't get an answer to your question, we will follow up with you directly to make sure that all questions get answered. So with that said, I want to go ahead and dive right into the content and start talking a little bit about ownCloud. So what I like to do when and those of you that have attended previous webinars, I usually like to spend the first couple of minutes describing to you what problem ownCloud solves, so that if you're new to ownCloud, if you're just getting started with ownCloud and don't really understand sort of the problem that we're here to solve, let me take you through that very quickly. We, in terms of corporate marketing, have adopted the sort of Dropbox problem theme. And so when we talk to people and we ask them, do you have a Dropbox problem? Guys, I know we may be experiencing some technical difficulties. If you all could if you can hear me, go ahead and acknowledge that back in your chat window or in your Q&A window. Okay, guys. Yep. So, guys, we'll start from the top, just for those of you that missed that part, and it sounds like everybody did, because we had some audio issues. First off, I want to welcome everybody and thank everyone for taking some time out of their day to join us for how to brand your ownCloud instance, integrating your corporate identity into ownCloud. And my name is Bob Boulay. I'm one of the senior sales engineers here with ownCloud, and I'm going to be bringing you through today's content. A couple of housekeeping items. In terms of the recording of this event, we will be recording it so that if you miss any aspect of this, or if you have a colleague that you think might be interested in seeing this, you will get an email from us with a link to the recording after the event has wrapped. The other piece is questions. If you have any questions, you can use the WebEx Q&A section of the client. So right on your desktop there, you should see a question and answer piece. Ask those questions. We'll get to as many of them as we can. Admittedly, some questions would be too complex to answer in this forum, so if you don't hear an answer to your question, we'll follow up with you directly to make sure we answer any and all questions that come in. So with that said, I want to go ahead and jump right into the content and talk to you a little bit about what ownCloud is. And the first couple slides, guys, are really for folks that don't have a lot of familiarity with what ownCloud does and what problem do we solve. From a corporate perspective, we have adopted the theme of, do you have a Dropbox problem? And what we mean by that is, have your users adopted a posture where they want to share files either internally or externally. They want to get access to their files, their unstructured data from their phone, their iPad, their Android tablet, So they ultimately go ahead and sign up for an account with a technology like Dropbox. And ultimately, this solves their problem, but it creates an enterprise problem. The enterprise problem that it creates is suddenly now your data is out in the public cloud. You don't have control over who has access to that data. And if and when an employee were to leave, they take this account with them because it's their personal or private account. So that data ultimately walks out the door with those users as well. So this is really how we define the Dropbox problem. And ultimately what ownCloud is striving to do is to provide that functionality for the end user. So satisfy that end user need while alleviating the pain that Dropbox-like experience causes you as a system administrator, corporate security advisor, something along those lines, because we're allowing you end-to-end control of that data. You're going to maintain who has access to that data. You're going to maintain where that data lives. You're going to maintain how often that data is backed up, and you're ultimately going to have an audit trail of who accessed these files, what they did to those files, who did they share those files with. So again, ultimately taking all of that stuff out of the public cloud and moving it into your data center while meeting the needs of that customer or that end user, as it were. So, if you think about, the three bullets in terms of what ownCloud is, it's that file sync and share solution that's completely on-site. It's going to integrate with your existing IT infrastructure. Those of you that have heard me speak before talking about integrating ownCloud with things like Windows, SMB, and CIF shares, or Active Directory or LDAP backends for authentication. We're extensible, so we offer the ability through an open API set to be able to go ahead and extend the product, to be able to go ahead and do custom work. So if you've got, an application that you're currently using to do things like collaboration, and you want to add file sync and share to that collaboration tool, it's very simple for us to come in, talk to you a little bit about that, and actually take that on so that we can ultimately deliver you a complete solution. So when we talk about what ownCloud is, what ownCloud does, ultimately we want to talk about sort of the components. And this is a nice lead-in to that theming conversation or that customization conversation we're going to have this afternoon. So if you think about when you want to customize or you want to brand, if you will, ownCloud as a private labeled service for your internal users, or if you're a managed service provider, pass that through, that functionality through to your customers, but your customers view it as your service. There are really three components that we talk about here. We're talking about the ownCloud server, and we're going to talk about, how to sort of customize, brand, and theme that piece of it. We're talking about the iOS and Android applications and how we can customize and theme those. And then the Mac, Windows, and Linux desktop synchronization clients, which can also be customized and themed. So now that we've talked a little bit about, sort of what ownCloud is, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to cover today. And again, the theme for this conversation is really going to be around branding. So branding the ownCloud server-side elements, talking a little bit about how to brand that web interface, using the CSS style sheets that we provide, and then ultimately adding that theme once you've created it so that it displays when users log in. That's something that, as we'll talk about this afternoon, that can be done in-house, so by you and your team. If you've got some CSS or HTML expertise, this is simply a matter of changing colors, swapping out logos, a very, very simple process. We're happy to advise, but certainly this is something that most of our customers can stand up on their own. The other two pieces, the sync client and the mobile client, that actually requires some professional services from ownCloud in order to do. So we have a sync client that actually sits on the desktop, and if you want to go ahead and customize that, adding in your color scheme, your logos, we're happy to work with you on that. We have a branding guide that we're going to look at today, and ultimately that's a project that gets kicked off once you purchase a subscription. And then there's the ownCloud mobile clients, which is, again, very, very similar. We're going to go ahead and actually treat that as an internal consulting project. We're going to engage with you, providing you with the branding spec that we'll look at this afternoon, have you provide us with color schemes, graphics, and ultimately allow you to submit this application to the iOS App Store, Google Play, whatever App Store, or provide you the means to distribute it through your own mobile device management interface. So let's talk a little bit about branding the ownCloud server and web elements. Basically, the way this is done is creating what we call a theme internally. Now, all of this is documented. If you go out to ownCloud.com and go to the documentation section, you can go to the development piece, and under core, you'll see theming. All of this is documented there, but essentially what you're going to be doing is creating what we call a theme. Now, these themes live inside of the ownCloud code. So inside, if you download ownCloud, drop it onto your web server, you'll see a file in the ownCloud root directory that is called themes. And ultimately, you're going to take all of your CSS style sheets, all of the graphics, as it's laid out in that documentation, and actually create your theme. You'll adjust the CSS style sheets for colors that you want to change to. You'll go ahead and swap out the graphics. You'll take the graphics that we embed natively and swap those out and pop all of that into the themes directory. And then ultimately, when you want to go through the process of actually enabling that theme, it's a simple change to the ownCloud config file. So you go into the ownCloud config file, add an entry called theme, and then ultimately the switch in that entry is the name of the folder in the themes directory that contains all of this information. Again, very, very straightforward, very, very simple to do, completely documented out on our site. Now, things like changing colors, this is, again, all done through the CSS style sheets that we provide you. And depending on how intense or how much you want to change the workflow, this could be as simple as opening up our style, .css and ultimately changing some of those colors. You could get into changing some of the JavaScript and some of the other things that we call if you really want to significantly change the workflow. And for that, I would encourage you to engage us. We have a professional services organization that can help you in a consulting project if you wanted to make some more intense changes to that workflow and the way ownCloud works. But ultimately, once you've gone through the process of creating, say, a basic theme, you simply go into that config file, add that theme to the theme entry to that config file, restart your web server, log back in, and you'll see those changes applied, assuming that everything is done correctly. Now, we've got a theming guide that we will make available that ultimately tells you, what the sizes of these graphics need to be, what format they need to be in order to work correctly. So we're going to go ahead and we can provide you with that. It's also downloadable on our website. Now, as I mentioned, branding the ownCloud Sync client, this is a little bit more involved, and typically this becomes sort of an internal consulting project here. You actually, as part of your subscription, can buy a branding subscription, and there are different levels of branding based on what you think your needs are going to be and how customized your Sync client will be. But ultimately, once you've engaged the ownCloud sales team and have agreed upon a subscription, then we can go through the process of introducing you to our branding team. And ultimately, that's an ownCloud project. We'll manage that project in conjunction with you. We'll provide you with the initial branding elements that we need. So basically what we're going to need from you is a set of graphics, a set of colors, and we provide that in the branding guide that we're going to take a look at here in a moment. And ultimately, once you've provided that to us, we can then go ahead and make those changes, ultimately push you out the code for testing, user acceptance testing, and then ultimately distribution to those users or those desktops that are going to be using this. And what I want to do real quick, guys, is take a fast look at that and give you sort of a walkthrough of what that looks like, and ultimately give you a sense for what are some of the things we're going to be asking for here. As you can see here, we lay out chapter and verse, the graphic, where the graphic lives, the size of the graphic, and ultimately the path to where it's going to go. Ultimately, things like the synchronization icons, the pause, these things are completely brandable, and something that you ultimately can go ahead and provide us with substitutes in, and we'll ultimately go ahead and actually swap those out. Just based on the image sizes, you just need to provide us images based on the image sizes laid out here. So again, pretty straightforward stuff in terms of being able to do that. And let's see here. So that's branding the synchronization client. And again, guys, very, very simple. You provide us with the graphics, we provide you with the branded model. The same thing holds for the mobile client. Now, the mobile client is a little bit more complex insofar as we actually sell a generic version of the mobile client that out on the App Store, the respective App Stores, Google Play and on the iOS App Store. Now, the difference between that and ultimately what you're going to get, obviously, is the branding, but also is the URL. As you can see here, the server URL in a purchased version of the ownCloud client can be plugged in by the user. When we do a customization, because we give you the ability to actually submit that client on your own to the app stores, you don't have to charge for it. So what we do is we take that section out and hard code in there where those users are ultimately going to be. So ultimately, you can go through here and actually customize the look and feel of this app. You'll provide us, again, with all of the technical specs or all the graphical specs that we need in order to brand this, and then ultimately we'll provide you with what you need to submit to the respective app stores. And ultimately, your users can do a search for whatever you decide to call the service that you're going to offer, and you can choose whether or not you want to charge because this is going to be ultimately your mobile app. And this is all part of the branding subscription that you can purchase as you purchase a subscription of ownCloud from your ownCloud sales rep. So let's take a quick look, a closer look at the branding guide as it relates to that. As we sort of flip through here and we took a look at, the desktop sync client, we also have some information on branding of the iOS app. And again, we provide you with the various graphics that go into this application, the various sizes that we need in order to be able to do this. So however you'd like to go ahead and brand this, you can have a graphic artist go ahead and generate these graphics in this size. So it really becomes a very simple process of providing us with the information that we need, and then we'll go ahead and push back to you a branded version of this client. So again, very, very straightforward, very, very easy. And again, you can get down to some of the very minute versions, the minute pieces here, all down to, do you like our secure lock icon, connection error icon? These are all changeable and swappable as it relates to the branding of the iOS or the Android client. Let me pop back into our slideshow here real fast. So guys, just to summarize what we've talked about, and again, guys, this is a very, very simple situation to sort of get involved with and get started with. There are three elements that can be themed. There are, your web server, your web interface. That's typically done by you as the customer. You can involve us or engage us if you'd like. If you want to do something a little bit more complex or steps outside of that workflow, we can certainly engage you in sort of a consulting engagement to be able to do that. We've got the mobile and sync clients. Those are the other two that require your ownCloud subscription. And ultimately what you want to do is buy a branding subscription and allow us to sort of step in and help you brand those elements. Basically give you those elements that sort of match up with the ownCloud web-based client to make it simple and making sure everything is consistent and give you the ability to go ahead and actually match off the web experience with the branded client-side experience in a very, very simple way. The mobile apps are customized and submitted to the mobile store by you, so you get to choose whether or not you want to charge. The only caveat there is we're going to hard code that link back URL, so it won't be something where a user can just come in and type that in. So the other thing to remember, guys, as you go through this process is we're here to help. So if you have questions, concerns, don't really understand an element of this or don't really understand sort of how this works from a business perspective, we've got folks here, on staff that can help you, explain it to you, and really give you a sense for what all is involved in doing this. So again, we try to make it as simple as possible from that perspective. And guys, this is always something that I like to cover at the very end because it's something we get a lot of questions about. People will come to us and say, hey, Bob, or, they'll ask the ownCloud sales rep, what's the difference between sort of the community edition and the enterprise edition? And, the main difference here that we've sort of highlighted as part of this presentation is the ability to go ahead and do things like branding the mobile client and branding the desktop sync client. That's one big piece of the difference between community and enterprise. But, obviously, if you look down this list, it becomes fairly self-evident. 50 users, if you're going to subscribe more than 50 users to this service, the subscription gives you support, influence, and tools. So you're going to get real-time enterprise level or enterprise class support when you subscribe, phone and email. We're a global organization, so you're going to get coverage that sort of follows the sun. You're going to get influence. You're going to get, in terms of our roadmap, we actually come to our customers first before we decide what's going to go into an enterprise release. So you'll get that level of influence. You'll get, the QA certified version of the ownCloud application. So as we do these releases, we tend to stagger these releases and ultimately do the additional QA that's involved to make sure that our enterprise customers are getting code that we've certified. And then there are a list of features here that come with the enterprise edition that simply are not supported in that community edition. So that's ultimately what you're getting here. The other piece is we give you a dual license as an enterprise edition customer. So not only do you get an AGPL license, but you also get a commercial license, which allows you to go ahead and customize the solution without the obligation to put that stuff back into the community if you choose not to. So just a quick piece there on sort of some of the differences. So at this point, guys, I want to take a look at what we might have for questions and see if we have any specific questions. Examples of branded clients. That's a great question, guys. And, it's hard for me. I don't have one set up here for you to see. However, there is a customer of ours out there called DataBird. If you go out on your iOS device or on your Android device and do a search of the App Store for DataBird, you can actually see a great example of what a branded application looks like. And it's very straightforward. You'll notice some of the stuff that I talked to you about before. It's going to ask you for a username and password, but not a server that you can log into. So that's a great example of that. And for those of you that are interested in actually seeing branded versions of the sync client, we'd be happy to set that up. As I said, you'll be getting a reach out from one of our sales folks. We'd be happy to set up a demo where we can bring you through some of the clients that we've done some branding and sort of show you some of the work that we've done with some of those customers. Okay, and it looks like we're just getting a few more questions here, so let me just hold off while these things come in. And ultimately, I just got a question on dollars. So ultimately, how much does this cost? Now, guys, I think that that's probably a question better suited for the individual sales rep because there's a lot of factors that go into it. I can tell you that you can buy a basic ownCloud subscription, and then there's also branding subscriptions that are additional costs. Now, in terms of what those dollars look like, we'll leave that up to your individual sales reps to get back, and whoever asked that question, we'll make sure your sales rep knows that you're interested. Is the community edition brandable? Well, guys, as I had said, the web piece of this is something that's typically done on your own. So to that end, yes, the community edition is indeed brandable. The iOS apps, the Android apps, and the Sync client apps are not brandable for use with the community edition. So that's something to keep in mind, that you don't get a license to brand those with the community edition. Well, guys, listen, it sounds like we've done a real good job of covering this material because those are all the questions that we got. And I also want to get everyone back to work. I really want to thank everybody for spending the short period of time with us here. Hopefully, these sessions are designed to sort of spur additional questions that you might have. If you're a customer that's considering ownCloud, we want to let you know how simple it is to do this branding. We want to let you know that it's not a big project. It's very cost-effective and easy to do to actually present a version of ownCloud that matches with either your corporate theme or if you're a managed service provider that matches the name and branding of the service that you want to present to your end users. So really, this is something that we do all the time, very, very straightforward and simple. We encourage you to engage us if you're interested. Really, guys, thanks a lot for spending some time with us today. You will get a follow-up from an ownCloud representative to make sure that you don't have any additional questions, and we can take it from there. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll talk to everyone soon.